Today is Tuesday, February 6th, and I know yesterday I did a podcast about Dan Quinn. Well, I'm doing another one today because I'm still wondering why he wanted the Washington Commanders head coaching job.
And now, a word from our title sponsor.
Are all financial advisors fiduciaries? Fewer than you think. Not knowing could reduce your lifestyle. Hi, I'm Mitch Kramer, founder and CEO of Fluent Financial. A fiduciary is a regulatory term to reduce conflicts of interest in wealth management. A fiduciary always works in your best interest. A non-fiduciary advisor might put their compensation or company ahead of yours. At Fluent Financial, we are certified financial planners acting as fiduciary advisors. To learn more, go to fluentfinancial.com or Fluent Financial's YouTube channel.
Now, you listening may not be in charge of purchasing seasonings for your home, but you do know what tastes good, really good. Goodness steak seasoning is great. Use it on, obviously, steak, chicken, veggies, or goodness knows what else. No sugar, no MSG, no gluten, but great flavor. Get Goodness Steak Seasonings by going to bringthetasty.com. That's bringthetasty.com.
Hey y'all, Jason Velo here with Oh Hail Contractors. I've been in the business for a little over a decade, and one thing I really enjoy doing is serving people. I want to see things made new again, and I can help you through that process by making the insurance claims process understandable and almost easy, believe it or not. Also, I can give you great suggestions on the best roofing system and even ventilation for your home, which ultimately makes your shingle last a little bit longer, even in Texas. Who do you know that wants that level of service? So, if you'd like some help with that, you can call me at 972-567-5766 or find me at ohhail.com, and that's OHHHAIL.com.
Yesterday, Washington introduced Dan Quinn as their new head football coach. Good coach, good fellow, very inspirational. Congratulations to Dan. But I'm still wondering about why Dan stayed in the race for this coaching job. There were 8 jobs open in the NFL this offseason. I thought the 3 worst were New England, Carolina, and Washington, and all for pretty much the same reason. Their rosters were so talent poor. Now, last year, Dan was in the running for 3 head coaching jobs, but at points of the searches, Dan withdrew his name from consideration to go back with the Cowboys to run it back from what was a very good-looking football team. This year, Dan was in the running for 5 head coaching jobs. He didn't withdraw his name from any of them, and 4 of them went to other people. Now, remember those 3 teams with the poorest rosters? New England, Carolina, and Washington? New England and Carolina, they added head coaches who were first-time head coaches in the league and were 36 and 37 years old. So why stay? Why stay in the Washington running when it was apparent that Washington preferred either Detroit offensive coordinator Ben Johnson or Baltimore defensive coordinator Mike McDonald? Dan Quinn was at best 3rd and maybe number 4 on the Commanders' coaching list, also behind Raheem Morris, who took the Atlanta Falcons head coaching job. I think there may be 2 reasons why Dan Quinn stayed in that competition and wanted that head coaching job, even though Washington's not a very good football team at all. As Cowboy fans can attest to this year, Washington was not competitive in many, many of their games this season. Reason number one why Dan Quinn may have wanted a head coaching job right now: age. Dan Quinn's only 53 years old, but that may be considered aging in the National Football League for head coaching jobs. For example, those 8 teams that needed head coaches this offseason, the oldest head coach hired was Jim Harbaugh, and he was considered the cream of the crop of the candidates this year. The next oldest, Dan Quinn, at 53 years old. 3 of the head coaching hires were in their 30s, 3 others in the 40s, and the next oldest to Quinn, 53, was Raheem Morris at 47. If you want to be a head coach in the league, 53 isn't too old. But as my doctor famously told me years and years ago, you're not getting any younger. What would Dan Quinn's prospects have been next season? Well, that Detroit offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, he's a hot name. So is the Houston's offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. They're both children in NFL coaching ages. Then there's the patriarch, Bill Belichick, who's sitting there waiting for another job, and quality Tennessee coach Mike Vrabel, whom only God and broccoli know why he was fired this year in Tennessee. And Quinn may have looked at the market next year and thought, gee, if I don't get the job this year, I'll be 54 next year, and then going on 55. And hey, nobody wants to talk about aging in the context of head football coaches. But if you look at the people getting hired these days, age appears to be a fairly important factor. The second reason why I believe Quinn wanted to stay in these competitions for head coaching jobs is the Cowboys' situation itself. Last year, Dan Quinn pulled out of those job considerations to come back to Dallas because this was a good situation. This was a 12-5 team. Yes, they'd failed in the playoffs, but this was a good team that was going to run it back again next year. This year, this offseason, well, Mike McCarthy has not been granted an extension. And if this team doesn't do particularly well under Coach Big Mac next year, they could be looking for a new head coach in Dallas. And by the way, I'm not at all certain that's not why Joe Witt Jr. left the Cowboys staff and joined Dan Quinn in Washington as his defensive coordinator there, when he probably could have had the defensive coordinator job here had he stayed. And Joe Witt Jr. had been on Mike McCarthy's staffs for 14 years in his NFL coaching career. Dan Quinn may have looked at the situation and thought, wait a minute, if I stay here and the Cowboys don't do so well, am I going to get the head coaching job if Mike McCarthy leaves? And Dan Quinn may have been very unsure about that. So on he goes to Washington. He's got his head coaching job. And Dan Quinn's a terrific fellow, and hopefully he does well. He's got a massive rebuilding job ahead of him in Washington. But now he's likely got several guaranteed years to try to work things out in Washington, where he didn't have that situation had he come back to Dallas.
Today's episode has been brought to you by Fluent Financial, by Oh Hell Roofing, and by Goodness Steak Seasoning.
Just Wondering is a production of DSP Media for FanStream Sports. You can find Norm's show along with other great programming at fanstreamsports.com.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Just Wondering. If you enjoyed it, please hit follow. Then, each episode every weekday will be delivered straight to you. And, if we might ask one more favor, please share it with friends. I'm Norm Hitzges, and every day I'll be just wondering about something.
And I'm Mary Hitchkus, and I'm just wondering too.